Hey everyone, and welcome to Peter Tears Stuff. This episode, I am tackling one of my favourite franchises, and that is Resident Evil. This is the first time we're doing something that isn't a movie franchise, I think. This is the first non-movie one. So I'm going to go through the Resident Evil franchise, and I'm going to tier them in letter grades A through F. Sorry, S through F. S being the top, the special, and then A through F is your typical letter grades. So we're going to get into this. I will not tier games that I have not played at least some of. If I've not played a game, I'll just ignore it, and we'll go from there. The first thing I always think of when I'm doing these is, okay, where do we start? Do I start with the bottom? Do I start with the top? I think the bottom is the easiest thing to do with this, and this is going to be a controversial choice, and this will separate the audience here for which, you know, who wants to stick around and see the rest of my opinion, who wants to just leave now because I've offended you so much. But I'll say it right now. Resident Evil 6 goes straight to the F tier. Screw this game! Resident Evil 6 is garbage. Resident Evil 6 is clunky. It is horrible to control. I didn't even finish the whole thing. I played through all of Leon's campaign, and it was annoying to play. It felt like Resident Evil a little bit at the start, but it was annoying. I remember it's like the second chapter, you're getting like grabbed like every 2 seconds from zombies on the ground. So annoying. Hated it. And I played through like half of Chris's campaign, and it was just this like, it wanted to be Gears of War. I hated it. There was no atmosphere, and none of what I like about Resident Evil, not even anything I like about Resident Evil 4 is in this game, never mind actual, like, proper classic Resident Evil. So, Resident Evil 6, F tier, no debate. No debate. It's the only main numbered title in the franchise that I've not finished, because I don't want to. I hate it. We could go to the top, we could go to, what's that S tier? Do I have an obvious answer for the S tier? Now, my favourite game in the franchise is unchanged, and has been for a long time. So it is quite easy to me to say S tier is definitely at least Resident Evil Remake. Resident Evil Remake is a game that I'm also counting in many ways as the original. Resident Evil Remake, for me, does kind of replace the original in the sense that it is kind of the same game, even though it does add some things. Obviously, graphics are much better, and that's why it's the perfected version. So I might not actually tier the original version of the game. The original PlayStation 1 version of the game, to me, the remake does kind of, you know, I do play the original game like once in a blue moon, right? But I don't usually. Usually I'll play remake in place of it. I'll play remake as the main thing that is that game, right? Whereas I think 2 is a little bit different. Resident Evil 2 is a game where I feel like the remake is so different that there's completely different styles of game, and I do think they rank separately. I do think I'm in the mood to play either one separately. Resident Evil 1, I always go with the remake, and it's my favourite because it perfects the classic formula. It's, you know, it's everything I love about Resident Evil, of course. If you don't know me, I love classic survival horror. I love the item boxes. I love the limited inventory. I love the idea of getting to save rooms, of learning the map, of finding key items, of the resources, and, like, you know, just how valuable some of your bullets or health is, and all these things. And I don't like the games to be a straight line. I like them to be, you know, Metroidvania style survival horror, and Remake is kind of the perfect atmosphere for that, and I love it dearly. But the question is, does anything else share the slot with it? Does anything else go with Resident Evil Remake in the S tier? And it's tough. It's tough because there's a good like handful of Resident Evil games that I think are amongst my favourite games of all time, and they're definitely but do I put the rest of them in the A tier to separate, you know, Remake as like the top dog, the one that's above everything else? Or do I simply say that it's slightly better than the other things, but there is other things in the S tier that kind of make it the greatness? And I think I'm going to. I don't think, as much as I always put Resident Evil Remake as my number one, I don't think I hold it so highly above some of the others that it's in a completely different tier. I think there's probably at least another couple of games in that top tier. This may be a spicy one, but my next pick, because I do like to put these in order as well, the one that's closest to the letter is the highest. So from left to right, it's, you know, best, second best in that tier. And my next favorite. This is tough because I've got two here that I want to put in. I've got two here that I want to put in. This is really hard. This is really hard because I like I love these two next games for kind of different reasons, and one has like a special quality to it because of what it represents to me and what it kind of felt like it brought back, and then the other one is a bit spicier because people don't tend to rate it as highly as I do. Screw it. Resident Evil 3 is next. I love Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. People talk about Resident Evil 3 and they say it's like less of a horror game, it's a bit more action. And it is a bit more action because you've got gunpowders, you've got a lot more enemies, but there's a lot more replayability. One of the things I love about Resident Evil 3 is just how replayable it is because of the infinite weapons you unlock, because of some of the variation in like the health and ammo items, like changing locations. I dig that a lot. But I think I just love I love the setting of Resident Evil 3. I love that it expanded it and it made the city the mansion. Because, you know, Resident Evil 2, it's like, so we had the mansion, so now we have the police station, and it's kind of like swapping in another building, right? I love that Resident Evil 3 takes the same idea of like, okay, so instead of hallways, we have streets, and instead of just rooms, we have different buildings as the rooms. And then, of course, we do have some bigger buildings later on that have their own sort of layouts, but that's kind of what we're doing here. It's the same thing, it's just on a bigger scale. It's not open world, and I don't want it to be open world. I don't want Resident Evil 3 Remake to be open world. I'm not interested in open world Resident Evil. What I want is a design map where each area is important, and I remember the layout of the map, and I know, by the time I get to the end of the game, I want to know the map at the back of my hand. I want to understand it, and I want to be able to tell you and walk around it in my head. Because I know it. It's, you know, each area is distinct, and Resident Evil 3, much like the other games in that part of the franchise, has that, but it has it on this bigger scale. I love going to the clock tower, I love going to the hospital, and all these various raccoon locations. I love the hunters returning, all that stuff. That is Resident Evil 3. And I think there is one more. There's another S tier game in here for me. And I'm delighted to be able to say this, that something newer makes that sort of tier. But Resident Evil 2 Remake goes in the S tier. A lot of this is because it really filled a void for me, because the franchise, in fact the subgenre, was kind of dead for a long time. And, you know, I'm about to, like, Resident Evil 4 is not going to be ranking low here. Resident Evil 4 is a great game. But Resident Evil 4 did kill what it was. It killed my favourite genre of gameplay. And it was gone for decades. And Resident Evil 2 Remake was the real return of that gameplay. That is the style that I wanted. It doesn't have to fix camera angles, but it was a return to the type of Resident Evil game that I wanted to play. And it was so special because of that. And it's like a lot of the best Resident Evils, it's very replayable. I've played it a ton of times, so it's only, you know, a year or so old, and I've beaten it at least a dozen times. It's baffling. It's baffling to me that, you know, people didn't want this for such a long time. You know, I used to get angry back in like the early 2010s when I would say I want proper survival horror to come back, and people would say to me, oh, but you've got Outlast, you've got, you know, Amnesia, and I'm like, they're horror games, but they're not the same style of gameplay. They're completely different. They're not the type of game that I like to play. So Resident Evil 2 Remake for me was almost like an emotional return of something that I didn't think I was ever going to get again. It was like tears of joy in my eyes. I was so, like, just weeping in happiness. And I think, you know, in terms of improvements, I love that it improved the characterizations. I think I already like Claire Redfield as a character. I think Claire Redfield might have become my favorite character. Well, favorite playable character. Barry Burton is my favorite Resident Evil character, but Claire Redfield might have become my favorite playable character, and I like her more than Leon easily. I like a few characters more than I like Leon, admittedly. But I think Claire has the better story, she has the better voice acting, and when she decides to stick up for Sherry in the sort of last portion of the game, it does genuinely feel like Ellen Ripley and Aliens, just like, no, I got this, I'm going to take on this son of a bitch. And it's, yeah, it's wonderful. I love it. Resident Evil 2 Remake is fantastic, and I realize there's two remakes in that top tier, but Resident Evil remakes games really well. I don't know what it is, but they've had good success. So naturally, I'm looking forward to 3 Remake, and I'll be curious to see where that slots into all this. But hey, Resident Evil 2 Remake is my third and final S tier game. So that takes us on to the A tier. The A tier is interesting because I still love these games dearly. I still love these games to death. And I think, you know, as a classic Resident Evil fan, I have a pretty weirdly unique list. And what comes next? What is the top of the A tier? And for me, the top of the A tier, I think, has to be the original Resident Evil 2. The original Resident Evil 2, it has all the things that I love about classic Resident Evil. If there's one thing that I think is missing in the remake of Resident Evil 2, it's some of that cheesy, like, 90s charm. I love the kind of the goofiness of Resident Evil 2. And while I do overall slightly rate the remake higher for some of the improvements it made, for some of the genuine sort of scariness to some of it, there is a wonderful charm. And I do love pre-rendered backgrounds. I love pre-rendered backgrounds. The scenario A and B is a little bit better in the original game. Scenario B is a little bit more different for each character. I kind of like that Mr. X is only in scenario B in the original game, so I do love that. But yeah, Resident Evil 2, there's not really a lot to have to say about this. I mean, people tend to love this game. A lot of people put Resident Evil 2 as their favourite, and I'm not quite there, but obviously the original trilogy is dear to me. And again, I'm counting the original PS1 game kind of with Remake. And just to justify that a little bit more, Resident Evil 1 for me is the game that made me realise that I love video games. Like, I played some and really liked some before that, but that was the game that captured my imagination. And to me, Remake is an extension of that. Remake is an evolution of that. It's the perfection of that, which is why, for me, I have to count them together. So that's why I'm doing that. A tier's not done yet, though. A tier has got a couple of more goodies in there. At least, yeah, it's got 2 more goodies. I'm not sure how controversial I want to be here, because I know the one that everyone's yelling at me for. I know that Resident Evil 4 is the one that people are shouting at the screen, where's that going? And I'll tell you right now, Resident Evil 4 is in the A tier, so I'll put that in next. Right? It's definitely A tier. It's a fantastic action game. It's wonderful. It's endlessly replayable. I will maintain to this day that it's not really a Resident Evil game. I will also maintain that it has the worst plot of the games up until that point. The plot in Resident Evil 4 is just kind of whatever. You're hunting down the president's daughter. One of the things I always bring up with Resident Evil 4 to show how much weaker the writing is the notes. See the documents you find around? They're meaningless. They give you nothing in that game. In Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, you actually get so much little slices of backstory and mythology and these little almost stories in and of themselves with those notes. And everyone remembers the Etchy Tasty document in the first game. Resident Evil 4, it's like the notes are like, oh, that guy, that American cop, he's running through here, he's almost here. That tells me nothing. That was a pointless note. There's tons of stuff like that. It's like they were just written like seconds before you got there. They're really uninteresting. The plot's just not as good. I don't like the plot of Resident Evil 4 that much. But as a game, as gameplay, it's wonderful. I have played that game to death. I have beaten it, I don't know if I'm at 100 yet, but I'm probably not far off 100 times beating Resident Evil 4. It is exceptional as an action game. It absolutely is. As a Resident Evil game, I kind of hate it for killing my franchise, or for killing my subgenre, I should say, not my franchise. But it is a wonderful game that I still play pretty frequently to this day, much like a lot of the Resident Evil games. But it is definitely not what I want. It is a straight line. I don't like how linear it is. I don't like these other things that make it not Resident Evil to me. But it is a wonderful game. So because of that, because of the strength of how good it is, it gets to be in the A tier. But the real question here, and obviously the merchant's great. The chat is reminding me that the merchant is great. The merchant is fantastic. And the suitcase is great. I love the suitcase. One of my biggest problems with 5 is that they took out the suitcase. Like, what, are you mad? Like, the suitcase was like a natural... It was one of the things that felt like a natural evolution to the old inventory system. It was like, no, let's give you a suitcase and you can move things to make them fit to your heart's content, as opposed to just having 8 slots. I thought that was inspired. But obviously everything has to be quick select now. It has to be like D-pad, quickly moving things around in the heat of the battle. I'm like, I don't mind pausing to pick a different weapon. I don't mind that. Give me the suitcase. Anyway, we can move on. So here's where the controversial part comes in. And I know this is controversial. I think Code Veronica also belongs in the A tier. And what I'm wrestling with right now is if I put it below or above 4. Because Code Veronica is a weird game. Code Veronica is delightfully weird, right? Code Veronica, gives you this weird Ashford plot. It gives you these weird locations. It gives you like absurd, over the top Wesker, but not like the. I mean, he's still silly, but he's not as silly as 4, or sorry, as 5. I mean to say, and I love that it's so long. Like one of the complaints that I hear about Code Veronica is how convoluted the puzzles are, and how the backtracking is the worst of any of the games, because you have to like it's really confusing the first time through. You can kind of forget like branches of the map, and you get kind of stuck because you don't remember that you need an item over here, because it's really convoluted compared to the other games, because the areas, especially in the first half and the first disc, are so spread out and so separate, and there's like one item in one area that you have to like track all the way to a different area to then unlock a new section of that area, and it's a lot more sprawling than the other Resident Evil games. Even more than 3, and 3's in a city, but 3's still designed like a big mansion in a weird way. Code Veronica is more like little hubs that are connected with like a really one connective tissue, and the connective tissue is quite long, and it's kind of weird in that sense. But I kind of like that, actually. For me, it's kind of like Resident Evil Code Veronica is one of the hardest games out of the original style of Resident Evil, with the fixed cameras and the 8 boxes and all that stuff. It's probably the hardest, with the one exception, which we'll get to soon. And to me, it was like, yeah, this is like the hard version of 2 and 3, and it's got a really weird plot to go with it. And I kind of like that. I'm kind of into that. And I'm obviously more partial to the classic style of gameplay than I am the action style of gameplay. I think I'm talking myself into it. I think I'm putting Code Veronica above 4, and I realize that's a hot take. It's a hot take, but this is my tiering list, so I don't care. Code Veronica goes above 4. And I believe that is the end of my A tier. A tier is complete with those 3 games. That's where I am right now. So now we have some lesser things to deal with. We have some lesser things. I'm going to knock out a couple of quick ones here. Some of the real garbage. I think also in the F tier is Survivor 2. I played that briefly on PS2. The controls were so bad that it was unplayable, so it has to just go in the F tier because it's just unplayable garbage. A little bit better than that, but not by much. It's got a bit more charm, and it's slightly more playable, is Gun Survivor. It's not good. It's not a good game at all, but it's better enough than Gun Survivor 2 to get it into the E tier. So I'll say that. I think Darkside Chronicles goes in the D tier. Not as good as Umbrella Chronicles. Umbrella Chronicles is going in the C tier. And my reason for this is that Umbrella Chronicles is actually a pretty decent light gun game. It's not great, but it was enjoyable enough when I played it on the Wii. I played it a little bit in the PlayStation 3 as well with the Move controllers, and it's a solid little light gun game, if nothing spectacular. It's fun going through the locations of the first and the third game, but Darkside Chronicles, it makes it the camera gets a lot shakier, it's a lot glitchier. It's just a lesser version of this one. So for that, I'm going to put that underneath and leave that there. Similar vein, I think Revelations goes in the C grade. I think Revelations is an interesting little spin-off game that's very janky. It has a couple of like attempts to be Resident Evil Classic again, but not really. It's kind of weird in that sense. But it does have a pretty fun thing called Raid Mode, which was fun to sort of kind of replay over and over again. But that was bested. It was bested by Revelations 2. So if I can find that bad boy here, I'm going to put Revelations 2 in the B tier. I think Revelations 2 is much better than Revelations 1. It's not good enough to go in the A tier by any means. It's still got a lot of the modern Resident Evil problems that we had before Remake 2. But the sections were fun to play. The raid mode was also addictive and was co-op, which was fun to play. It was just this fun bonus thing in co-op. But, the main game was pretty solid for what it was. It was taking a lot of Last of Us. It felt cheap. The graphics aren't that good, even for the time it came out. It felt like a budget game, but it was a relatively enjoyable budget game. So I would give that the B tier. I think that's fair. And plus, you get to play Barry for the first time. Well, not counting the Game Boy game, which I never played. For the first time, really, you got to play Barry Burton in a proper game. So it gets points for that as well. But I remember there's some jokes in that game. The first chapter of Resident Evil Revelations 2, there's a joke at one point where in Claire's side of the story, she cracks a Claire sandwich joke, And then Barry's daughter, who's like with her, says, "Oh, does he tell everyone that story?" It had a lot of love for the games past. Like there was a lot of references to the old games in Revelations 2. So I give it some props. It's not amazing, but it's a solid enough game to play. This gets tough here. We're getting tough here. We're getting to some entries here that are a little bit loved by some people, but not necessarily as much by me. I think Resident Evil 7 is kind of a murky one for me, where I really appreciate its attempts to be more like classic Resident Evil, but I think it kind of doesn't get all of it right, and it still has some of those sections that I don't like about modern horror games. I don't like the stealth stuff with Jack early on, because that reminds me more of Outlast, and I hate that part of the game. It almost made me quit playing the game. But it does have some fun stuff later on. It does have some of the map design stuff of Resident Evil, which was really nice to see come back. But it did take some motivation to get through. I wasn't necessarily in love with the first person. I really would like nothing more than Resident Evil 8 to not be first person. But I am happy to give this the B tier, I think. Is it below Revelations 2 though, or above Revelations 2? I think it's probably slightly below for me. And I know for some people Resident Evil 7 was this return to form. For me it wasn't. For me it was kind of a good step in the right direction, but Resident Evil 2 Remake was the return to form. I think the two that I'm going to tackle next, which is Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 5, are kind of interesting, because 5 is an action game like 4, but it's co-op. It's not as good a game as 4. You know, Resident Evil 4, while it wasn't what I want from Resident Evil, was perfect for what it was. Resident Evil 5, you know, took out the merchant, and while it's not just that it took out the merchant in terms of the fun character of the merchant, part of the problem with that is that the merchant kind of replaced the save room, in that the merchant was the thing in 4 that you were happy to see. Like when you were playing it for the first time, you didn't know, you know, when the next merchant was. The merchant was the thing that when you went through an area and you realized, oh, I'm in a merchant area. Oh, thank Christ, I get to, you know, buy some upgrades. I get to, you know, replenish my health. I get to do whatever. Like he was the thing you felt relieved to see, and that was one of those feelings that it kind of kept from the old games. Resident Evil 5 took that away. Resident Evil 5's shop was just in the menu in between chapters, and also whenever you died. So Resident Evil 5 actually rewarded you in a way for dying, because it gave you a chance to spend your money that you'd accumulated, and you could buy some upgrades before you tried the boss again, or before you tried that room with all the enemies again. And I didn't like that. That said though, it is a really fun co-op game, and it was a fun thing to play. I remember getting it at midnight and playing it with a friend, pretty much all the way through to the end in a big marathon session. That was a really good time. I've had fun playing it in co-op with multiple people over the years, and it is a fun action game in co-op. And one of the things that I'll say over Resident Evil 4 is that at least it's more relevant to the overall plot of Resident Evil, because it's Chris, and it's finally him confronting Wesker. And because of that, I have to kind of appreciate the fact that it's more tied to the plot. I don't know why Jill has blonde hair. I hate that. It's just such an annoying, weird, random choice. But the fact that it ties into Chris and Wesker and even Jill to an extent makes it more relevant to the overall game, the overall series. So I appreciate that from a plot perspective. That said, it is definitely a weaker game than 4. But I think because of how much fun it is to play co-op, I think I have to put that at the upper end of the B tier. I think I have to put that over Revelations 2. So if I just moved it... Sorry, I was on the wrong camera there. I'll do that again. I'll do that again. There we go. It's on the B tier. So I'm putting that at the top of the B tier as it stands, because the other thing that's kind of fighting for around this spot is Resident Evil 0. And Resident Evil 0 is a conflicting game, because it's the best looking of the fixed camera games. It looks even better than Remake does. Not by much, but it does look better. It's a stunning game for its time, and it holds up very well. The HD remaster looks gorgeous. It's classic fixed camera angles. The problem with 0, there's two main problems with 0. Problem number 1 is the inventory system, because they added this feature where you could drop items whenever you want. And that's a fine thing to add. The problem is that in adding that, they decided that that was worth taking away the item boxes. So there was no way to put something in a box and retrieve it in a new location later. You had to go back to where you dropped it. And then on top of that, to make matters worse, they limited the item numbers that you could carry per person. And they also, on top of that, made some of the weapons take up 2 slots, which was, up until that point, was reserved for only the most rare weapons. It wasn't the shotgun and the grenade launcher, which in Zero it is. So the inventory management in Zero is basically terrible. It makes it really frustrating to play. It makes it really frustrating to deal with the heal hook, which takes up 2 slots. All that stuff is a real pain to deal with. And that makes it rougher to play than the other games. The controlling 2 characters is okay. I have no problem with that necessarily. It's just the inventory side of things that's a pain. The other reason though why it has troubles compared to the other classic Resident Evil games for me is the story's easily the worst out of the games. I wouldn't say it's worse than 4. I think 0 and 4 is probably on par story-wise. They're equally just kind of like side stories that are kind of redundant. 0 might even be more annoying though, because it does that prequel thing where it has to like shoehorn in all this plot. Like, we have to believe all of this stuff happened between Rebecca landing in the forest, which is supposed to be close to the mansion, and then she goes on this adventure that goes in a train, into a lab, into these other buildings, and then eventually makes her way back to the mansion in one night, because that's where she needs to be for you know, Resident Evil 1 story. That always felt kind of bullshit. I did kind of like Billy. He's alright. Billy's alright. Rebecca's fine as a side character. I don't know if they necessarily, you know, work as main characters though. So that stuff kind of sucks. That said though, it is a classic Resident Evil style game, and I still have fun playing it, just lesser than the others. It's definitely my least favourite of the classic style, by far. So with all that said, where am I putting it? With all that said, C tier feels a bit harsh, because I definitely like it more than in Umbrella Chronicles. I definitely like it more in Revelations 1. This is the weird thing, like, I think on paper I like 7 more. But I've replayed 0. I've made a point of replaying 0 at least a bunch of times. I've beat 0 probably at least half a dozen times. You know, I played a fair bit of Leech Hunter and locked the infinite ammo and stuff like that in the minigame. Like, I've done that. You know, I bought the remaster on both PS4 and Steam. Even though it's, out of the classic games, not my favourite by any stretch. It's my least favourite of the games before 4. Not counting stuff like Gun Survivor. So it's a weird one for me. It really is. Because I do love how it looks. I love it because it's kind of that era. I love it because it feels more like Remake, even though it's nowhere near as good. So this is maybe the toughest one I've had to place. It's definitely going in the B tier, but I don't know where in the B tier. I think because even though all these things that I'm saying, I think my gut still tells me it goes to the bottom. So I think it goes to the very bottom of the B tier. A lot of caveats. There's a lot of caveats with that one, and I acknowledge that. But yeah, so let's look forward then to whatever else is left. What else have I played? I've not played the Game Boy game. I've not played Operation Raccoon City. I've not played, I think that's Dead Aim. Never played that. Never played Umbrella Corps. I don't like multiplayer games, so they're out. I'm not going to count Resident Evil 1 as separate from the remake, so that's just going to stay down there. That's Operation Raccoon City. So what's that then? Is that Outbreak 2 or something? Is that Outbreak? I think these are Outbreaks. So the only thing left here that I've actually played is Mercenaries 3D. And Mercenaries 3D, when I briefly had a 3DS, was basically just the minigame from 5, but with more maps. So it was a bit of a rip-off from a price perspective, but it was fun to play. So I think for that reason, it goes to the upper of the D. Because Darkside Chronicles was frustrating to play. Mercenaries 3D was at least still fun to play, but it was just a minigame, basically. That's it. There we go. That's my ranking. So my S tier is Resident Evil Remake, followed by Resident Evil 3 Nemesis and Resident Evil 2 Remake. My A tier is Resident Evil 2 Original, Resident Evil Code Veronica, and Resident Evil 4. B tier is Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil Revelations 2, Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil 0. My C tier is Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles and Resident Evil Revelations. D is Mercenaries 3D and Darkside Chronicles. E is Gun Survivor, and F is 6 and Gun Survivor 2. That is my tiers. It's very personal. I'm not saying this is the objective. There's no point in doing an objective version of this. I will always favour classic Resident Evil style over the action style of 4. Although Remake 2, of course, has the over-the-shoulder camera, but everything else feels more like classic Resident Evil, which is why I love it so much. So there we go. There we are. That is my final tier. I'll leave it up there as I do my outro. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed me arguing why I prefer these games in whatever order I do. It is my favourite video game franchise easily, and Resident Evil 1 is the game that made me love video games, as I said. I love this franchise to death. I highly recommend. Me and Tim had a big discussion about Resident Evil as a franchise and a sort of a review of 2 Remake last year. If you can hunt that down, me and Tim talked about that on the channel, so give that a look. But that is my tiering of Resident Evil. So if you want to support everything we do, head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. You can, of course, like, subscribe, ding the bell on YouTube for notifications, and of course check out other content we have. Not a lot of video game content, admittedly, but I'm pretty sure me and Tim will eventually have a discussion about Resident Evil 3. So there we go. That is the tiers. Thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate it. Keep playing video games, I guess, and I will see you guys next time. Stars!